Life is going to hit you hard. One day you'll wake up and everything you thought was solid will crumble. The plan you built, destroyed. The people you trusted, gone. The path you thought was straight, blocked. And in that moment, when everything falls apart, you have a choice. You can sit there, broken, or you can stand up. You can take ownership. You can adapt. You can fight. Because chaos is not the end. It's the beginning of who you are meant to become. When everything around you is falling apart, the first instinct most people have is to panic. The mind races, the heart pounds, and the world feels like it's spinning out of control. That chaos consumes you, blinds you, and drags you deeper into the storm. But in those moments, you have to do something that feels unnatural. You have to step back. You have to detach from the chaos. Detachment is not about ignoring reality. It's not about pretending the situation isn't happening. It's about creating space between you and the storm so you can see things clearly. When you are in the middle of emotional turmoil, every decision feels urgent, every thought feels critical, and every problem feels like it has to be solved right now. But if you act from that place of panic, you're not thinking, you're reacting. And reactions in chaos are almost always destructive. Detaching means taking a breath. It means pulling yourself out of the fire, even if only mentally, so you can assess the battlefield. Think about a soldier under heavy fire. If he lets the chaos consume him, he starts shooting wildly, wasting ammunition, exposing himself to more danger, and putting his team at risk. But the disciplined soldier steps back. He calms his breathing, detaches from the noise, and looks at the situation from above. He doesn't just see bullets flying, he sees the terrain, the angles, the cover, the opportunities. That's what detachment gives you perspective. In life, chaos comes in many forms. It might be losing your job, breaking down relationships, financial collapse, or health problems. These events trigger emotions that cloud your vision: fear, anger, frustration, despair. And when those emotions are in control, you can't make the right moves. You say things you don't mean, you make decisions you regret, you burn bridges you'll need later. But when you detach, you rise above those emotions. You give yourself the ability to see the truth, what's really happening, what can be fixed, and what can't. Detachment is a form of discipline. It takes practice to not get pulled into the storm because your instincts scream at you to fight or run. But discipline allows you to pause. Discipline allows you to maintain composure when others are losing their minds. Discipline allows you to observe instead of react. And in observation, you find clarity. You see that not everything needs to be solved immediately. You see that some problems will resolve themselves. You see that your energy should not be wasted on panic, but focused on action. Detachment also gives you control over time. When you're consumed by chaos, time feels compressed. You think you have no room to breathe, no space to move, no chance to act. But when you detach, time slows down. You create space between the problem and your response. That space is where strategy is born. That space is where smart decisions replace desperate reactions. It's not easy. Detachment requires humility. You have to admit that you don't know everything, that your emotions might be lying to you, that the first solution that comes to mind might not be the best one. Detachment requires strength. You have to resist the urge to lash out, to blame, to surrender. And detachment requires patience. You have to wait long enough for the noise to settle so you can see the path forward. Detachment doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care enough to not let your emotions sabotage you. It means you are willing to step back so you can step forward with precision. It means you are willing to accept the chaos without letting it control your mind. Because once you detach, the chaos loses its power over you. You are no longer just a participant in the storm. You become the commander, the strategist, the one who can find order in the middle of disorder. When life collapses around you, the temptation is always there to point the finger, to say it was someone else's fault, to blame the circumstances, the timing, the system, the people who betrayed you, the unfair hand you were dealt. That's easy. That's the default response. But easy doesn't fix anything. Excuses don't rebuild what's broken. Blame doesn't move you forward. The only way you take control when everything falls apart is by taking ownership. Full, absolute, no excuses ownership. Ownership means you stop waiting for someone else to come and fix the mess. You stop looking for a rescuer because no one is coming. Ownership means you stand in the middle of the wreckage and say, this is mine. This problem is mine. This responsibility is mine. And the solution will also be mine. It doesn't matter if it was your fault or not. It doesn't matter if the disaster came from outside forces, bad luck, or betrayal. Ownership isn't about fault. It's about power. As long as you are blaming, you are powerless. But when you take ownership, you seize control. You put yourself in the driver's seat, even if the road ahead is broken and covered with obstacles. There is a hard truth you have to accept. No one cares about your excuses. Life doesn't care. The world doesn't care. Your enemies don't care. And even the people who do care, the ones who love you, they can't carry your burden for you. They can't rebuild your discipline. They can't fight your battles. They can't fix your mindset. That is all on you. And the moment you understand that, the moment you embrace that, you gain an edge over everyone else who is still stuck in the loop of blame. Taking ownership forces you to look at yourself in the mirror and confront reality. You can't hide behind the illusion that everything is someone else's problem. You can't hide behind circumstances. You have to admit that maybe you didn't prepare enough. Maybe you didn't adapt fast enough. Maybe you relied too much on others. Maybe you ignored the warning signs. That honesty stings. It cuts deep, but it also sharpens you, because once you admit your role, you also realize you have the ability to change. If you had a hand in creating the problem, or even just letting it grow, then you have a hand in solving it. Ownership is not about beating yourself up. It's not about wallowing in guilt or shame. It's about facing the truth without flinching, then using that truth as fuel. It's about saying, I can do better and I will. When you remove excuses, you strip away the lies that keep you weak. Excuses protect your ego in the short term, but they destroy your progress in the long term. Ownership may bruise your ego, but it builds your strength, your resilience, your discipline. Think about the difference between a leader who blames and a leader who owns. A blaming leader loses the trust of the team. No one wants to follow someone who refuses responsibility, but a leader who owns every failure earns respect, because everyone knows that person will also own the solution. You have to treat your life the same way. Be the leader of your own existence. Take full ownership of every setback, every shortcoming, every mistake, and every failure. That mindset transforms you from a victim of circumstance into an architect of your own future. When everything falls apart, excuses give you an exit door. They give you a reason to quit. Ownership removes that door. It traps you in the fight. And that's exactly where you need to be. Inside the fight, inside the struggle, carrying the weight, refusing to let go. Because when you take ownership, you remove all other options but forward movement. And forward movement, even if it's slow, is the only path that leads out of the rubble and into strength. When everything in your life feels like it is breaking down, when stability is gone and uncertainty surrounds you, there is one thing that can hold you steady: discipline. Discipline is not just a habit, not just a routine, not just a set of rules you follow. Discipline is the anchor that keeps you grounded when the storm is trying to drag you into the abyss. Without discipline, chaos will swallow you whole. With discipline, you can weather the worst conditions and keep moving forward. Discipline means you do what needs to be done, not just what you feel like doing. Feelings are fragile. Feelings are inconsistent. In the middle of crisis, your feelings will betray you. You won't feel like getting out of bed. You won't feel like working. You won't feel like taking care of yourself. You won't feel like fighting. And if you depend on feelings to guide your actions, you will fall apart along with everything else around you. But discipline cuts through that weakness. Discipline says, I don't care how you feel. I care about what must be done. Think about a ship in violent waters. The waves crash, the wind howls, the vessel shakes, and everyone on board is terrified. Without an anchor, the ship is tossed endlessly by the sea, pushed wherever the storm decides. But with an anchor, there is stability. It doesn't mean the storm disappears. It doesn't mean the danger is gone. But it means you have something holding you steady, keeping you from drifting aimlessly, giving you a foundation to endure until the waters calm. That is what discipline does for you in life. Discipline is waking up at the same time, even when your world is collapsing. Discipline is sticking to the workout when your mind tells you to quit. Discipline is controlling what you eat, what you consume, what you allow into your mind when everything else feels out of your control. Discipline is doing the work, making the calls, taking the steps forward, even when progress feels invisible. It's the repetition of action, the refusal to stop, the consistency that builds strength in the middle of chaos. Without discipline, you become reactive. You let emotions, circumstances, and other people dictate your behavior. You are like a leaf blowing in the wind, fragile and directionless. But with discipline, you decide, you hold the line, you follow the plan, you maintain standards even when everything around you is falling below them. Discipline turns chaos into order, not because the outside world changes, but because you refuse to let your internal world collapse. Discipline also builds trust in yourself. In crisis, self-doubt creeps in. You start questioning your ability, your worth, your future. But when you are disciplined, you silence those doubts with proof. Every action you take, every standard you maintain, every promise you keep to yourself becomes evidence that you are not broken. You are still in control. You are still capable. You are still moving forward. That trust is critical because if you don't believe in yourself, no one else will. People think discipline is restrictive, but in truth, it is freedom. It frees you from the prison of panic and fear. It frees you from the trap of procrastination. It frees you from the weakness of relying on motivation alone. Discipline doesn't need inspiration. It doesn't need comfort. It doesn't need perfect circumstances. Discipline exists on its own. It carries you when everything else fails. And in the darkest times, when the world feels unbearable, discipline becomes the light. You may not see the end of the road, but you can see the next step. You may not know when the storm will end, but you know what you have to do today. Right now, in this moment, discipline is that step. Discipline is that action. Discipline is that anchor that holds you steady no matter how hard the storm rages. When everything falls apart, the plan you had in your head, the strategy you thought was perfect, the path you believed was certain, all of it gets destroyed. Life doesn't follow the script. The ground shifts, the environment changes, and suddenly what worked yesterday doesn't work today. That is the reality of chaos. But survival, progress, victory, these don't come from clinging to what no longer works. They come from your ability to adapt. They come from your willingness to look at the broken pieces, to accept that the situation has changed, and to execute the next move without hesitation. Adaptation is not weakness. Adaptation is strength. It is not about giving up on your mission. It's about adjusting your approach so you can still achieve it. A rigid mindset breaks under pressure. If you refuse to change, if you refuse to adjust, the storm will crush you. But flexibility backed by discipline is power. It allows you to bend without breaking, to maneuver without losing sight of the target. The mission remains, but the tactics evolve. That's how you endure. That's how you win. Execution is where adaptation becomes real. Too many people get stuck in analysis, constantly rethinking, over-planning, or wishing for the old circumstances to return. But chaos doesn't wait. The clock doesn't stop. You don't have unlimited time to sit and dream. Once you've adapted your strategy, once you've identified the new way forward, you must execute. You must act. Because action, even imperfect action, creates momentum, and momentum is what pulls you out of paralysis. Think about combat. The enemy doesn't move the way you expected. The terrain isn't what the maps showed. The plan you trained for is useless. In that moment, a leader has two options: freeze and hope things go back to the way they were, or adapt and execute. The leader who freezes is lost. The leader who adapts makes new calls, maneuvers differently, shifts fire, changes direction, and executes with confidence. That execution may not be flawless, but it is decisive, and decisiveness keeps the team alive. Life works the same way. The job you counted on might vanish. The relationship you depended on might collapse. The health you took for granted might be stripped away. You can sit there wishing it didn't happen, wasting days, weeks, months, but that doesn't rebuild anything. Or you can adapt. You can reframe your mission, redefine your strategy, and act on what's in front of you. That doesn't mean the pain disappears. It doesn't mean you stop caring about what was lost. It means you refuse to stay stuck in a place where nothing changes. It means you choose forward motion instead of stagnation. Adaptation also requires humility. You have to admit that your old way is gone. You have to accept that the plan you built has failed. That's not easy for the ego. The ego wants to cling to the idea that you were right, that your way was perfect, that the world is wrong. But reality doesn't bend to your ego. Reality is what it is. The sooner you accept that, the sooner you can shift. And when you shift, you create opportunities that didn't exist before. Executing the next move isn't about giant leaps. It's not about instant transformation. It's about taking the step that is available right now. Maybe it's small. Maybe it feels insignificant. But every executed step builds momentum, and momentum builds progress. One move at a time, one decision at a time, one action at a time, you start to climb out of the wreckage. And once you build that rhythm, once you combine adaptation with execution, you become unstoppable. When the world around you collapses, the first thing you feel is the loss of control. Plans disintegrate, people walk away, opportunities vanish, and suddenly it feels like you are powerless against the weight of everything crashing down. That feeling of powerlessness can crush a person more than the actual circumstances. It's what drives people into despair, into paralysis, into giving up. But the truth is, no matter how much falls apart, no matter how much slips through your fingers, there are always things you can control. And your strength in chaos comes from focusing relentlessly on those things instead of obsessing over what you cannot change. Control is not about everything going your way. Control is about narrowing your vision to the pieces of the situation that are still within your reach. You cannot control the storm, but you can control how you hold the wheel. You cannot control the behavior of others, but you can control your own response. You cannot control the past, but you can control the decisions you make right now. When you stop wasting energy on what is outside your power and start directing it toward what is inside your power, you regain clarity, momentum, and stability. The mistake most people make is fighting battles they cannot win. They rage against the uncontrollable, demanding answers, fairness, or circumstances that will never come. That fight only drains them further, leaving them weaker and more defeated than before. But the disciplined mindset accepts the hard truth. There are limits to what you can influence. Once you acknowledge those limits, you stop giving your time and energy to things that do not move you forward. You reclaim that energy for action. Controlling what you can control starts small. You control your routines. You control when you wake up, what you eat, how you train, how you speak, what you consume mentally and physically. You control your attitude, your effort, and your discipline. You control whether you take responsibility or make excuses. These may seem like small things, but when everything else feels unstable, they become pillars that hold you up. A simple act like sticking to a workout, even when your life feels shattered, is proof that you still have power. Eating with discipline when you want to drown in comfort food is proof that you are still steering your own ship. Keeping your word to yourself, no matter how small the promise, is proof that you still command your own life. Control also means focusing on the present moment. The future can overwhelm you with uncertainty. The past can haunt you with regret. Both will paralyze you if you let them. But in the present moment, there is always something you can do. You may not be able to fix everything today, but you can take one step. You can make one decision. You can build one habit. Those actions stack up, and over time, they rebuild the foundation you need to stand tall again. In chaos, people often look outward, searching for someone to change the situation for them. But the truth is that the only control you truly have is inward. You control your mindset, your reactions, your discipline, your actions. And those inward controls create outward results. They may not change everything at once, but they create ripples that spread, shifts that compound, momentum that grows. The reality is harsh. You cannot control when disaster strikes. You cannot control when people fail you, when plans collapse, when life blindsides you. But you can control whether you stand back up. You can control whether you learn, whether you adapt, whether you take responsibility. That is where your strength lies. Not in controlling the storm, but in controlling yourself in the middle of the storm. When destruction surrounds you and everything you built has been torn down, the temptation is to stare at the rubble and believe it is the end. The walls have crumbled, the plans are shattered, the life you thought you had is gone, and all you see is ruin. That moment is heavy because it feels final. It feels like you have nothing left to stand on. But inside that rubble lies the opportunity to rebuild, not weaker, not the same, but stronger than before. Rising from the rubble is not about pretending the collapse never happened. It's about using the collapse as fuel to become harder, sharper, more resilient than you were when everything was intact. When everything is destroyed, you are stripped bare. The comforts, the illusions, the excuses, they're gone. What remains is the raw version of you, and that raw version has a choice to stay broken or rise. Rising from the rubble means you take the pieces that are left and forge them into something unbreakable. You accept the pain, the loss, the mistakes, but you refuse to let them define you as finished. Instead, you let them forge you into something new. Strength born from comfort is fragile. Strength born from struggle is unshakable. When you rise from the rubble, you are no longer naive about how harsh life can be. You know what it means to be broken. You know what it feels like to lose. You know how heavy the weight of chaos can be. And that knowledge gives you power because you are no longer afraid of it. You've seen the worst. You've survived it. And survival builds a foundation of strength that cannot be taught, only earned. Rising stronger is not about speed. You don't have to rebuild everything overnight. It's about persistence. It's about taking the small steps consistently, day after day, even when progress is invisible. You rebuild your body, your mind, your discipline, one action at a time. The rubble will tempt you to quit because it whispers that you're too far gone, that it's not worth it. But every time you refuse to listen, every time you take another step, you are rising, slowly, steadily, unrelentingly. The rubble itself becomes part of your strength. The failures you suffered become lessons. The betrayals you endured become wisdom. The pain you felt becomes fuel. Every scar becomes a reminder of what you've overcome. You don't hide those scars. You wear them because they are proof that destruction did not finish you. They are proof that collapse did not erase you. They are proof that you had the will to rise. When you rise stronger from the rubble, you also inspire others. People watch you. They see you go through the fire, they see you fall, and they wait to see if you stay down. But when you rise, when you rebuild, when you come back harder and sharper, you show them it's possible. You show them that collapse is not the end. That ruin can be turned into rebirth. That strength can be forged from destruction. And even if no one else notices, you notice. You gain the unshakable confidence that comes from knowing you can be knocked down and still stand again. Rising stronger doesn't mean going back to who you were before. It means becoming someone greater, someone forged by chaos, hardened by collapse, disciplined by necessity, someone who has proven to themselves that nothing, not disaster, not betrayal, not failure, can keep them down permanently. The rubble that once seemed like the end becomes the very ground you stand on as you build again. And with every step, every action, every decision, you rise. Not the same as before, but stronger, sharper, and more unbreakable than ever.